The bright lights of the medical station's emergency ward buzzed overhead as Dr. Jin-Ho Park finished his 20th hour of work. His dark hair was messy, and his white coat had coffee stains from 3 different emergencies. He wanted nothing more than to go home and sleep. Just 10 more minutes, he said to himself, typing the last patient report into his computer. The medical station floated in neutral space, treating anyone who needed help, no matter which side of the galaxy they came from. A loud beep from his personal communicator made him jump. The message that popped up was marked ultra urgent in flashing red letters. Jin-Ho frowned. He didn't recognize the encryption code. Dr. Park, the message read, "Your help is needed immediately. Life or death situation. Complete secrecy required. Payment will be triple your usual fee. Coordinates attached. Come alone." Jin-Ho rubbed his tired eyes. Secret emergency calls usually meant someone important had gotten hurt doing something they shouldn't have. But the encryption level on this message was higher than anything he'd seen before. He grabbed his emergency medical kit and headed to his small ship. The station's night crew barely looked up as he walked past. Late-night emergency calls were normal for the senior trauma surgeon. "Computer, set course for the received coordinates," Jin-Ho said as he climbed into his ship. The computer beeped, showing the location was only 30 minutes away. As his ship moved through space, Jin-Ho checked his medical kit. Fresh synthetic blood packets, tissue regenerators, burn treatment gels, everything a doctor might need for emergency trauma care. His fingers moved quickly, counting supplies like they had thousands of times before. The ship's computer announced arrival just as he finished his check. Jin-Ho looked out the window and saw a large private yacht floating in space. Its engines were dark, and it was broadcasting no identification signal. Very suspicious. A tight beam communication came through. "Dr. Park, dock at the private entrance on the port side. Come straight to the main cabin. Remember, absolute secrecy is required." Jin-Ho docked his ship carefully. His heart beat faster as he walked through the yacht's airlock. The corridor was empty, but he could see expensive decorations everywhere. Real wood panels covered the walls, something only the extremely wealthy could afford in space. The main cabin door slid open as he approached. Inside, he found 3 people. 2 were large guards in black armor who pointed weapons at him immediately. The third was a young woman lying on a couch, clearly in pain. Her elegant clothes were burned and bloody. "Dr. Park," one guard said, "drop your medical kit and raise your hands." Jin-Ho did as they asked. He kept his voice calm and professional. "I'm here to help, but I need my medical kit to treat the patient." The guard scanned him thoroughly before letting him pick up his kit. As Jin-Ho moved closer to the injured woman, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On her neck was a small tattoo, 3 golden stars inside a diamond, the royal mark of the Stellar Empire's ruling family. "Hello, doctor," the woman said weakly. "I'm Hei-Yun. Please help me." Jin-Ho's mind raced. This wasn't just any patient. This was Princess Hei-Yun Kim, daughter of King Du-Won Kim, the tyrant who ruled half the galaxy with an iron fist. The king who was famous for executing anyone who disappointed him, even his own family members. Pushing his fear aside, Jin-Ho opened his medical kit. His doctor's training took over as he began examining Hei-Yun's injuries. "What happened?" he asked, scanning her with his medical devices. "Plasma burn from a ship's engine," Hei-Yun said, wincing as he touched her side. "And I hit the wall hard when the ship had to make a sudden turn." Jin-Ho nodded, noting she was leaving out important details. The burn pattern didn't match her story, but he knew better than to ask too many questions. His scan showed 3 broken ribs, internal bleeding, and second-degree plasma burns across 20% of her body. "You need surgery," he said. "These injuries are serious. You should be in a proper medical facility." Hei-Yun shook her head. "Impossible. No one can know I'm here. No one can know I'm hurt. Can you treat me here?" Jin-Ho looked around the cabin. It was luxurious but not sterile. It's not ideal, but yes, I'll need to bring more equipment from my ship, and it will take several treatments over a few weeks for you to heal properly. Money is no object, Hei-yun said, and you'll be well protected. But doctor, she grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. If my father finds out I'm here, we'll both be executed. Do you understand? Jin-ho understood perfectly. Everyone knew stories about King Du-won's cruelty. The king once destroyed an entire space station because he heard rebels might be hiding there. No one ever found out if there really were rebels aboard. I took an oath to help people and keep their secrets, Jin-ho said. I don't care about politics. I only care about healing my patients. Hei-yun studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Good, because I'm going to tell you the truth, doctor. I got these injuries helping people escape from my father's death squads. The guards shifted uncomfortably, but didn't speak. Jin-ho kept his face neutral as he prepared a pain-killing injection. Your Highness, with all respect, I don't need to know details. Let me focus on treating your injuries. No, Hei-yun said firmly, even as she relaxed from the pain medication. You're risking your life to help me. You deserve to know why. She took a deep breath. I've been helping the resistance for months now, warning them about raids, helping prisoners escape, sharing information. Tonight, something went wrong. We were discovered. I got these injuries making sure everyone else got away safely. Jin-ho's hand stayed steady as he began cleaning her burns, but his mind was spinning. The princess herself working with rebels. If King Du-won found out, he wouldn't just execute her. He'd make an example of her. The punishment would be slow and public. The resistance thinks I'm dead, Hei-yun continued. That's good. It keeps them safe. But I need time to heal before I return to the palace. Father is away on a campaign right now. He won't expect to see me for at least a month. That should be enough time, right? With proper treatment and rest. Yes, Jin-ho said. He carefully applied burn gel to her injuries. But you'll need to stay completely still for at least the first week, and you'll need several treatments each day. I've arranged everything, Hei-yun said. This ship is completely secure. The crew is loyal to me, not my father. You'll be given quarters here and well paid for your time. She smiled slightly. Don't worry, doctor. We'll tell the medical station you're on a special private assignment. It's even technically true. Over the next few hours, Jin-ho worked steadily to stabilize Hei-yun's condition. He performed minor surgery to stop the internal bleeding, set her broken ribs, and treated the worst of the burns. The guards watched every move, but didn't interfere. As he worked, Jin-ho found himself impressed by Hei-yun's strength. She barely made a sound during painful procedures that would have most patients screaming. Her eyes stayed alert and focused, even through the pain medication. Why did you choose me? He asked finally, as he finished bandaging the last burn. There are many doctors closer to where you were. Because you're human, Hei-yun said simply. Humans are the only species that ever stood up to my father and survived. Your people refused to join his empire, but he couldn't defeat you in war. He had to sign a peace treaty instead. She smiled. I've learned humans can be trusted to do what they think is right, no matter the consequences, and your medical skills are legendary. Jin-ho nodded slowly. The war between humans and the Stellar Empire had ended 15 years ago, but everyone remembered it. Humans had been badly outnumbered, but their determination and creativity had frustrated King Du-won's best generals. The peace treaty that followed allowed humans to remain independent, though many, like Jin-ho, now worked throughout the galaxy. Rest now, Jin-ho said, packing up his medical kit. I'll come back in 6 hours to check your bandages and give you another treatment. Try not to move. Thank you, doctor, Hei-yun said softly. I know I'm asking you to risk everything by helping me, but I promise you won't regret it. As Jin-ho followed a guard to his new quarters, He wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was now caught between the galaxy's most dangerous tyrant and the rebellion trying to overthrow him. And the tyrant's daughter was right in the middle of it all. But when he thought about He-Yun's determination to help others despite the risk to herself, he knew he had made the right choice. He was a doctor. His job was to heal people, no matter who they were or what they had done. He just hoped they would both live long enough for him to finish the treatment. 2 weeks passed on the secret medical yacht. Jin-Ho fell into a steady routine of treating Princess He-Yun's injuries. Every morning, he would check her burns and change the bandages. Every evening, he would use the tissue regenerator to speed up her healing. Between treatments, they talked. "Tell me about Earth," He-Yun asked one morning, as Jin-Ho carefully removed old bandages. "I've never been allowed to visit human worlds." Jin-Ho smiled, keeping his hands gentle as he worked. "It's very different from the Empire's worlds. We still have large areas of natural forest and ocean. Not everything is covered in cities." "That sounds wonderful," He-Yun said, trying not to wince as he applied new medicine to her burns. "Father says untamed nature is wasteful. Everything in the Empire must be useful." "Sometimes beauty is useful in its own way," Jin-Ho replied. He noticed her burns were healing well. The new skin was pink and healthy. Humans found that keeping natural spaces made people healthier and happier. He-Yun was quiet for a moment. "That's what I want for the Empire. Not just grand cities and military bases, but places where people can be happy." She looked at Jin-Ho seriously. "Did you know my father doesn't provide medical care for poor people? He says if they can't afford it, they don't deserve to live." Jin-Ho had heard about this policy. It was one reason he worked at a neutral medical station instead of in the Empire. "Every human has a right to medical care," he said. "It's one of our basic laws. That's why I started helping the resistance," He-Yun said softly. "I couldn't stand seeing people suffer when we have the power to help them." She sat up carefully, stronger now than she had been 2 weeks ago. "Let me show you something." She pressed her palm against a hidden scanner, and a secret compartment in the wall opened. Inside was a data crystal. "This contains proof of everything my father has done. Every execution, every destroyed planet, every stolen resource. The Resistance has been collecting this information for years." Jin-Ho stepped back, raising his hands. "Your Highness, I'm just a doctor. I don't want to get involved in politics." "You're already involved," He-Yun said firmly. "Every person my father hurts, every child who dies because they can't afford medicine. You could have helped them if the Empire was different." She held out the crystal. "I'm not asking you to fight. I'm asking you to understand why I do." Before Jin-Ho could respond, the ship's alarm started blaring. One of He-Yun's guards burst into the room. "Your Highness, a royal patrol ship is approaching. They're demanding to dock." He-Yun moved quickly despite her injuries, hiding the data crystal. "How did they find us?" "Commander Taiwan Lee is leading the patrol," the guard reported. "He says he's here on your father's orders to check on your welfare." Jin-Ho saw fear flash across He-Yun's face before she controlled it. "Taiwan is my father's most trusted agent," she explained quickly to Jin-Ho. "He's clever and dangerous. We need a plan." She turned to the guard. "Tell them they can dock. But first, help me move to the meditation room." She grabbed Jin-Ho's arm. "Doctor, you're now my personal physician, treating me for stress and exhaustion during my meditation retreat. That's my cover story. Can you maintain it?" Jin-Ho nodded. He had treated enough rich patients to know how these things worked. "Of course. But your burns." "The meditation room is kept dark for spiritual reasons," He-Yun said as the guard helped her walk. "And my loose meditation clothes will hide the bandages. Just follow my lead." Minutes later, He-Yun sat in a traditional meditation pose in a dimly lit room. She had changed into flowing dark clothes that covered her injuries. Incense smoke helped hide the smell of medical supplies. Jin-Ho stood respectfully in the corner, looking every bit the private doctor. Commander Taiwan Lee entered the room like he owned it. He was tall and moved with deadly grace. His black uniform showed his high rank in the Imperial forces. 2 armed soldiers waited outside the door. "Princess," Taiwan said, bowing slightly. "Your father was concerned when he couldn't reach you directly." "Commander," He Yun replied calmly. "As you can see, I am fine. I'm taking time to center myself through meditation and reflection. Dr. Park is helping me with some minor health issues." Taiwan's sharp eyes studied Jinho, a human doctor. Interesting choice. Dr. Park is very skilled with stress-related conditions, He Yun said, and he understands the need for privacy. Father should be pleased I'm taking care of my health. Jinho kept his face professional and blank as Taiwan questioned him about He Yun's treatment. He gave careful, technical answers about meditation techniques and stress management. Every word was true, just not the whole truth. "Your father asks when you will return to the palace," Taiwan said finally. "2 more weeks should complete my retreat," He Yun answered. "Please tell him I am looking forward to seeing him then." Taiwan nodded, but he didn't leave. Instead, he turned to his soldiers. "Wait outside. I need to speak to the princess privately." Jinho started to leave too, but Taiwan stopped him. "Stay, doctor. This concerns you as well." When the door closed, Taiwan's whole manner changed. The dangerous swagger disappeared, replaced by urgent concern. "Your Highness, you need better security. It took me less than a day to find you once I started looking." He Yun tensed. "Are you here to arrest me, Commander?" To Jinho's surprise, Taiwan smiled. "No, I'm here to help you. Did you think you were the only one in the royal court working against your father?" He pulled out his own data crystal. "I've been gathering evidence too, and helping people escape when I can. That's how I found you. I recognize the pattern. It's the same way I hide people." He Yun stared at him for a long moment. "Prove it," she said finally. 3 days ago, you helped 5 families escape from the mining colony on Nexus 4, Taiwan said quietly. "I made sure their transport safely reached free space. They're with the resistance now." Jinho watched He Yun's face as she processed this information. He had learned to read her expressions over the past 2 weeks. He saw the moment she decided to trust Taiwan. "Why are you telling us this now?" she asked. "Because your father is planning something big," Taiwan said grimly. "He's making lists of suspected resistance sympathizers, not just common people, nobles, military officers, anyone he thinks might turn against him. When he returns from his campaign, he's going to start executing them. Thousands of people will die." He Yun's face went pale. "How long do we have?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. He wants you back at the palace before it starts." Taiwan looked at Jinho. "That's why I'm glad you have a human doctor. Humans are the only ones who ever successfully stood up to the king." Jinho shook his head. "I'm not a soldier or a spy. I'm just trying to help my patient heal. Sometimes healing one person can help heal an entire society," Taiwan said. "The resistance needs both of you. Princess He Yun gives them hope. And you, Doctor, you prove that different species can work together for a better future." He Yun stood up carefully, her injuries hidden by her flowing clothes. "We need to make plans. But first," she turned to Jinho. "Doctor, I understand if you want to leave. You didn't ask to be part of this fight." Jinho thought about everything he had learned in the past 2 weeks. He thought about He Yun's courage and compassion. He thought about all the people in the Empire who couldn't get medical care. "I took an oath to help people," he said finally. "That means all people, not just the ones who can afford it. I'll help however I can." He Yun smiled, and even Taiwan looked relieved. They spent the next few hours making plans, speaking quietly in the meditation room. Jinho mostly listened, offering suggestions when medical issues were discussed. Later that night, after Taiwan had left with promises to return, Jinho checked He Yun's injuries one last time. Your burns are healing well, he said. You should be fully recovered in 2 weeks. Just in time, Hei-yun said softly. Doctor, thank you. Not just for healing me, but for staying. For understanding. Jin-ho carefully wrapped a fresh bandage around her arm. I'm starting to realize that some injuries can't be treated with medicine alone. Sometimes, you have to fix the system that caused them. Hei-yun touched his hand gently. Together, we will. I promise you that. As Jin-ho walked back to his quarters that night, he realized his life had changed completely in just 2 weeks. He had come aboard this ship as just a doctor, focused only on healing one patient. Now he was part of something much bigger, a chance to help heal an entire empire. He just hoped they would all survive what was coming. The next week passed quickly on the medical yacht. Jin-ho continued treating Hei-yun's injuries, which were healing well. Commander Ta-won visited every 2 days, bringing news from the palace and the resistance. But on the 8th day after his first visit, Ta-won arrived looking worried. Your father is coming home early, he told Hei-yun during their evening meeting. He'll be back at the palace in 3 days. Hei-yun was sitting in the ship's main cabin, no longer needing to hide in the meditation room. Her burns had healed enough that only faint pink marks remained. 3 days. That's a week earlier than planned. Why? Someone tried to kill him, Ta-won said. The attempt failed, but now he's angry. He wants to start the purge immediately. Jin-ho, who was checking Hei-yun's vital signs, saw her hands shake slightly. How many people are on his list? She asked. Over 10,000. Ta-won's voice was grim. And those are just the main targets. Their families will be punished too. We're talking about 50,000 people or more. Hei-yun stood up suddenly, walking to the window. The stars outside looked cold and distant. We're not ready. The resistance isn't strong enough yet to protect all those people. No, Ta-won agreed. And that's not all. Your father is asking questions about your meditation retreat. He wants proof you're really there for spiritual reasons. Jin-ho spoke up. The medical records are perfect. I made sure they show exactly what you'd expect for a stress-related retreat. Records can be faked, Ta-won said. The king is sending his personal doctor to examine Hei-yun tomorrow. Dr. Yoon is completely loyal to the king. If he sees any sign of her injuries. The room went quiet. They all knew what would happen if the king discovered Hei-yun's secret activities. Then I have to go back, Hei-yun said finally. Now, before Dr. Yoon arrives. If I return to the palace voluntarily, father might delay his plans. He always likes to have me at his big announcements. It's too dangerous, Jin-ho protested. Your injuries aren't fully healed, and if your father looks closely. I can hide the injuries, Hei-yun said. I've been hiding things from my father my whole life. She turned to face them. But I need your help, both of you. Over the next hour, they made plans. Tai-won would announce that the princess had finished her retreat early, eager to welcome her father home. Jin-ho would return to his medical station, but with new diplomatic credentials as the princess's personal physician. Take this, Hei-yun said to Jin-ho, handing him a small data chip. It contains copies of everything. All the evidence we've collected about father's crimes. Keep it safe, if something happens to me. Nothing will happen to you, Jin-ho said firmly. But he took the chip and hid it in a secret pocket of his medical kit. Tai-won left first, heading back to the palace to prepare for Hei-yun's return. Jin-ho stayed to do one final treatment of Hei-yun's remaining injuries. I still think this is too risky, he said as he worked. Your father is already suspicious. If he finds out, if I don't go back, he'll definitely know something is wrong, Hei-yun said. At least this way I have a chance to help those people. She caught his hand. Jin-ho, thank you. For everything. It was the first time she had used his first name. Jin-ho looked at her and saw not just a princess, but a brave young woman trying to save her people. Be careful, he said softly. The next morning, They put their plan into action. Hei-un dressed in formal royal clothes that covered her healing injuries. Jin-ho packed up his medical equipment and prepared to return to his station. But as they were making final preparations, the ship's alarms went off again. This time, 3 royal warships appeared around them. "No," Hei-un whispered, looking at the tactical display. "That's my father's personal fleet. He came himself." Before they could react, King Du-wan's voice boomed through the ship's speakers. "Daughter, did you think I wouldn't find out?" Armed troops transported onto the yacht. Within minutes, they had control of the ship. Jin-ho and Hei-un were taken to the main cabin, where King Du-wan waited. The king was tall and powerfully built, with gray in his black hair. His eyes were cold as he looked at his daughter. "I received very interesting information about your activities," he said. "About how you've been helping my enemies." "Who told you?" Hei-un asked, standing straight despite her fear. "Does it matter?" The king smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What matters is that you betrayed me, your own father. You betrayed your people first," Hei-un said. "When you chose cruelty over kindness, when you decided that power was more important than helping people." The king's smile disappeared. "Helping people makes them weak. Fear makes them strong." He turned to Jin-ho. "And you, human. Helping a traitor is a serious crime." "I'm a doctor," Jin-ho said calmly. "I help anyone who needs medical care. That's not a crime where I come from." "You're not in human space now," the king growled. But before he could say more, new alarms started blaring. "My king!" A soldier rushed in. Resistance ships. At least 20 of them, coming out of hyperspace. Through the cabin windows, Jin-ho saw flashes of light as ships appeared all around them. He recognized the old human warships that the resistance used, mixed with smaller, faster vessels. "Impossible," King Du-wan said. "How did they know?" "I told them," said a new voice. Commander Ta-wan walked into the cabin, holding a weapon. More soldiers followed him, but these wore resistance insignia. "I've been working both sides for years, my king, waiting for the right moment." The king's face turned red with rage. "Traitors, all of you." He reached for his own weapon, but Ta-wan was faster. The stun blast hit the king squarely in the chest, and he collapsed. "The resistance has control of the other ships," Ta-wan reported. "And loyal officers in the palace have arrested the king's closest supporters. It's over." Hei-un walked to her unconscious father and looked down at him sadly. "No, it's just beginning. Now we have to rebuild everything." She turned to Jin-ho. "Will you help us? We'll need doctors more than ever now." Jin-ho looked at the king on the floor, then at Hei-un standing tall despite everything she'd been through. He thought about all the people in the empire who needed help. "Yes," he said. "I'll help. That's what doctors do." Hei-un smiled, and for the first time since Jin-ho had met her, she looked truly happy. "Then let's get to work. We have an empire to heal." Outside the ship's windows, resistance vessels moved into defensive positions around them. The star field behind them seemed brighter somehow, full of promise and possibility. The healing of the stellar empire was about to begin. 1 month after King Du-wan's arrest, Jin-ho stood in the grand hall of the imperial palace. The place looked different now. Hei-un had ordered the dark war banners taken down and replaced them with bright artwork from all parts of the empire. Sunlight streamed through windows that had been covered for years. "The public ceremony starts in an hour," Ta-wan said, walking up to Jin-ho. The commander now wore the simple uniform of the new Imperial Guard. "Are you ready?" Jin-ho adjusted his formal medical uniform. "I still don't understand why I need to be there. I'm just a doctor." Ta-wan smiled mysteriously. Hei-un insisted. "She says you're the most important guest." The past month had been busy. After her father's arrest, Hei-un had worked quickly to stop his planned purge. She released all political prisoners and invited resistance leaders to help form a new government. There had been some fighting from loyal imperial forces, but most soldiers switched sides when they learned the truth about King Duwan's crimes. Jinho had been busy too. He-Yun asked him to help set up a new medical system for the Empire. He worked with doctors from Earth and other worlds to create hospitals that would treat everyone, not just the rich. The work was hard but satisfying. Now it was time for He-Yun to officially become Empress. The ceremony would be broadcast across the Empire. Everyone wanted to see the princess who had helped overthrow her own father to save her people. The grand hall filled with people as the ceremony time approached. Jinho saw faces from all parts of the empire. Nobles in fancy clothes, resistance fighters in simple uniforms, common people who had been invited to show this was a new age. Some humans were there too, including Earth's ambassador. Music played, and He-Yun entered the hall. She wore a simple white dress instead of the traditional heavy royal robes. The burned scars on her arms were visible. She had refused to hide them, saying they showed she was willing to suffer for her people. The ceremony began. He-Yun took the traditional oaths, promising to protect and serve the empire. But she added new promises too, to provide medical care for all, to listen to the people's voices, to rule with kindness instead of fear. Then came the surprise. "My first act as Empress," He-Yun announced, "is to name my chosen consort, as our laws allow." She turned to where Jinho stood. "Dr. Jinho Park, please come forward." Jinho froze. Tai-Wan gently pushed him forward. Walking to He-Yun felt like a dream. 3 months ago, He-Yun said to the crowd, "This human doctor risked his life to help me when I was injured. He showed me that true strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. He proved that different species can work together for the good of all." She turned to Jinho. "Our laws say an empress's chosen consort cannot be rejected, not by tradition, not by the noble council, not even by the consort himself." She smiled at his shocked face. "Though I hope you won't reject the position." Jinho found his voice. "Your Highness, I'm just a doctor. I don't know anything about ruling an empire." "Exactly," He-Yun said. "You're a healer, not a politician. That's what this empire needs." She held out her hand. "Help me heal our people, Jinho. All of them." Jinho looked at her hand, then at her face. He saw the same determination he'd seen that first night on the yacht, when she told him about helping resistance members escape. He saw the same compassion that made her risk everything to save others. He took her hand. The crowd cheered. Jinho heard some surprised voices. No human had ever been named as royal consort before, but he also heard happy shouts, especially from the common people. They liked the idea of a doctor helping to lead them. The ceremony continued. Jinho took new oaths, promising to use his medical knowledge to help all people in the empire. He-Yun was officially crowned as Empress. Together, they signed the first new law of her reign, creating the Imperial Health Service, which would provide medical care to everyone. Later, at the celebration feast, Jinho finally had a chance to talk privately with He-Yun. "You planned this all along, didn't you?" he asked. "From the moment you called me to treat your injuries." He-Yun smiled. "Not exactly. But I knew I needed someone like you. Someone who cared more about helping people than gaining power." She touched the faint scars on her arm. "These injuries taught me something important. Sometimes you have to get hurt to help others heal. And sometimes the best rewards come from doing the right thing, even when it's dangerous." "It's going to be hard," Jinho said. "Changing an entire empire's medical system won't be easy." "That's why I need you," He-Yun said. "You understand both medicine and people, and you're not afraid to help someone, even when others say you shouldn't." She led him to a balcony overlooking the capital city. Lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars. "Look out there," she said. "Millions of people who never had proper medical care before. Children who lost parents because they couldn't afford treatment. Elderly people suffering because they had no access to medicine." Jinho looked at the city, thinking about all the people who needed help. Where do we start? We already have. He-Yun said. The first new hospitals are being built. Medical ships are being prepared to reach distant planets. Earth has offered to send doctors to train our people. She squeezed his hand. But most importantly, we're showing everyone that the Empire can change. That we can be strong through kindness, not fear. Taiwan joined them on the balcony. The first reports are coming in from the outer planets, he said. People are celebrating in the streets. They're calling it the healing revolution. Jinho thought about how much had changed in just 3 months. He had gone from being a simple doctor on a medical station to helping lead an empire. But his basic mission hadn't changed. He was still helping people heal. What happened to your father? He asked He-Yun. He hadn't heard anything about King Do-Wan since his arrest. He's under house arrest in a comfortable mansion. He-Yun said. No execution. We're showing people that even those who do wrong can be treated with mercy. She smiled sadly. Maybe someday he'll understand why we did what we did. The celebration continued late into the night. Jinho met doctors from across the empire who were eager to help with the new medical system. He talked with human medical officials about training programs. Everyone wanted to be part of the change. As the night ended, He-Yun found him again. Tired? She asked. A little, Jinho admitted. It's been quite a day. Get used to it, she said, laughing. We have a lot of work ahead of us. She looked out at her city, her empire. But we'll do it together. The doctor and the empress, healing an empire. Jinho smiled. It wasn't the kind of reward he had expected when he answered that emergency call 3 months ago. But as he looked at the city below, thinking about all the people they could help, he knew it was better than any payment could have been. The healing of the stellar empire had begun, and he would be part of it every step of the way.